My research focuses on science fiction and fantasy literature, and I read it for fun. And I became interested in what the stuff we read for fun is doing to us and for us in terms of how we think about the world and other people in it. I'm looking at how race and gender have been and continue to be constructed in these genres of fiction. For instance, when was the last time you saw a big new Hollywood science fiction movie about women? Not only do I want to examine this critically and a little bit suspiciously, but I also want to acknowledge and celebrate the things that these stories do well, the ways that they can sometimes prompt us to look at the world in ways that aren't familiar to us. I think there are these kind of common sense perceptions among readers that either A, types of stories that speculate like science fiction and fantasy are going to be almost by nature free of stereotyping and portrayals that harm people who aren't seen as, air quotes, normal, just because they're imaginative. Or B, that it's all made up dragons and castles and or spaceships anyway, and so it doesn't matter and who cares.
The way that one scholar puts it, fantasy has become ubiquitous in our culture. It's extraordinarily popular. It's especially popular among young adults and adolescent readers. What I'm learning through reading Max's work is that historically, fantasy and speculative fiction have been somewhat problematic in terms of the way they represent gender. Some of the fantasies, in fact, are extraordinarily sexist and continue to be sexist. And the same thing goes for race and heteronormativities. Because the genre is so ubiquitous, that I think that the kind of work that Max is doing in investigating that and problematizing it, I think is really important.
What I'm arguing is that these types of fiction aren't inherently any more progressive than any other cultural products, and that they reflect the times and the circumstances in which they were written and get no free ticket out of being caught within those frameworks just because they're imaginative. But I'm also arguing that science fiction and fantasy can and do have some advantages when discussing topics like race and gender, in that they can use speculation to break us out of viewing these things in set ways.
Purify and intensify it for dramatic effect, but extend it into the future. If this goes on, this is what will happen. A prediction is made.
One of the things about Max is that he is so modest and unassuming, it's easy for people to forget just how accomplished he is. When he entered the master's program, he entered with a Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada scholarship worth over $17,000.
I think it's important to ask these kinds of questions about the stuff we engage with, both to be aware of the kinds of stories and characters these sorts of stories ask us to value, and maybe recognizing how this valuing is sometimes quite limited.
I love working with Max. He's brilliant, he's hardworking, and easy to work with, and it's a sheer delight.